But first, the Liberal leadership race is over, and as many referred to it, the coronation of Mark Carney, or as I called it on Money Talks, and this was even before the so called soft launch of Mr. Carney's campaign on the Jon Stewart show in January, I called it the anointment. But I had a little bit of an advantage. I had an excellent source in the UK telling me that Mr. Carney was raising money in London for a leadership bid more than 2 years ago. But before I go further, I also have to admit that in the interview with Jon Stewart, Mr. Carney got off to the wrong foot, at least as far as I'm concerned. He did it by gaslighting the public, claiming that he was an outsider. Come on, that's a nonsensical claim given that he had been advising the Trudeau government for 5 years, which included heading the Prime Minister's leader's task force on economic growth, as well as significant international groups like the World Economic Forum, the Glasgow Alliance for the Net Zero, the chairing the Brookfield Asset Management, or being on the board of PIMCO. And you got Trudeau stalwarts like Katie Telford and Gerald Butts. Well, they're supporting him. Come on, it was absurd to claim he was an outsider. My question is, why make a statement that's so easily challenged? And that same applied to the claim that he made that he wasn't the chair of Brookfield Asset Management when Brookfield made the decision to move to New York, when in fact he was. But my thing is, why assert something that's so easily disproved? Other than maybe it's a profound disrespect for the voting public. I could give other examples. The point is that he may not be an experienced politician, but come on, it did not take him long to adopt one of the most troubling characteristics of politicians, and that is gaslighting the public. And that's played a significant role, by the way, in the trust and confidence decline in government. Simply put, it's the constant gaslighting, the dissemination of misinformation, and at times outright lies that has fueled what the elites call populism. Personally, I was hoping for more, but instead, Mr. Carney sent a strong message that it's business as usual. And obviously, 86% of the voters in the Liberal leadership think that's just fine with them. But what about the reluctance to release policy specifics or hold press conferences or take questions from reporters? I don't think that would be too much to ask of someone who not only was taking over as Liberal leader, but also Prime Minister. Obviously, Mr. Carney disagreed. I say to all parties, why not show trust and respect for the voters and tell them not only what your policy priorities are, what specifics and details you can add behind their implementation? Well, at this point, there's no evidence when it comes to the principal choices between the two major parties that anything's changed. Yes, the Liberals have adopted some of the Conservatives' talking points by promising to get rid of the carbon tax, along with the capital gains tax increase. But voters have little evidence that much else has changed. Although the government's message is that after a dismal economic financial track record for 9.5 years, it'll be different this time with the former central banker at the helm. And I sure hope so. And I have no doubt, by the way, that Mr. Carney is significantly more sophisticated than Justin Trudeau, who not only showed little understanding, but arguably no interest in 9.5 years in government in the economy or in the finances. I mean, gosh, last December, he literally said, let the bankers worry about the economy. As I said a few weeks ago in Money Talks, though, I've never seen a party distance itself from its own track record as aggressively as Mr. Carney's done since announcing his candidacy. But the question now is, what are the specific policies he'd like to see implemented? While he's been noticeably reluctant to answer questions, it's not hard to get the impression that when it comes to prioritizing climate change, it's going to be business as usual, which is not a surprise given his dedication to the fight against climate change for well over 12 years, stating in quotes, "Climate change is the defining issue of our time and poses a fundamental threat to economic and financial stability." Well, nothing's changed. And also, of course, he's been closely associated with so many major climate initiatives, including like the World Economic Forum's Foundation Board. He's been a governor while he was the governor of the Bank of Canada and continued his involvement with the governor of the Bank of England. He was on that board. Now, certainly the climate challenge hasn't changed. Only the ability to garner support for it seems to have. At least it's in question now. Even without, though, many details, there's no evidence whatsoever that he's changed his convictions, and that's all good. And much like Justin Trudeau, those convictions will translate to policy, whether he spells them out before an election or not. I think the choice for voters is still the same straightforward one. Liberals under Mark Carney versus conservatives under Pierre Poilievre, the two offer very different economic visions, along with the role, the scope, and size of government. I mean, for the liberals, it's more regulation. You're going to get bigger government versus the conservatives downsizing government through attrition, less government intervention, lower taxes. That's your choice. There's no need for the over-the-top hyperbole, character assassination, or misleading narratives, because the difference between the two parties are stark and represent a very different view of Canadians going forward. So I say, be honest with the voters and let them choose.